I'm Kevin Wilk, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Walnut Creek City Council. The City Council is conducting this meeting from the City Council chamber. This meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's website. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek City Council meeting, I wanted to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. For each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for public comment on the item. Thus, if you desire to speak to an item on the agenda this evening, please hold your comments until the City Council considers that item. Additionally, we have a section on the agenda titled Public Communications, which is for public comments for items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communication should not relate to an item that is on the agenda this evening. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be initially allocated for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the open session portion of the meeting if necessary. If you desire to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and then when you approach the lectern, please state your name and city of residence for the record. You will have 2 minutes to address the City Council. Please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that meetings are conducted efficiently and effectively, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the Council chamber and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Written comments submitted and received up to 2 hours before the meeting have been posted to the city's website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be separately read into the record. Good evening. I'm Kevin Wilk, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, and welcome to the Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 concurrent regular meetings of the Walnut Creek City Council and the Public Facilities Financing Authority. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And City Clerk Susie Martinez, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Darling? Here. Councilmember DeVinny?
Here.
Councilmember Silva? Here. Mayor Wilk?
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem Francois is absent due to a work commitment.
All right. Our first item is a proclamation for Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And are you, oh, that is timing. All right. By Katrina Natali, Human Trafficking Task Force Director with the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office, to accept the proclamation. I'll first read from it a bit, and I'll read it from here. So, whereas human trafficking is a form of interpersonal violence and a crime in which force, fraud, coercion, or similar means is used to compel victims into commercial, sexual, and labor exploitation affecting individuals of all genders, citizenship, status, ages, and backgrounds. Human trafficking can happen to anyone. Certain populations are at greater risk, including people affected by abuse, violence, poverty, unstable living situations, or social disconnection, as well as those systematically marginalized and underserved. Human trafficking requires a coordinated community-wide response engaging diverse stakeholders, including survivors, community members, educators, advocates, law enforcement, social workers, and professionals from a broad range of disciplines, agencies, and expertise, among others. Whereas the 42 partners of the Contra Costa Human Trafficking Task Force are striving to identify and provide services to the survivors, investigate and prosecute all forms of human trafficking, and build their and the community's capacity to respond to and prevent human trafficking. In 2025, the 15 victim services agencies in the task force, including Community Violence Solutions and Arm of Care, provided comprehensive, trauma-informed services to hundreds of victims of human trafficking throughout Contra Costa County, including crisis intervention, case management, advocacy, emergency housing assistance, and referral to resources. And whereas between October 2024 and October 2025, law enforcement agencies in Contra Costa County investigated 67 cases of sex and labor trafficking and identified 103 potential victims who were connected to services in the district attorney's office, lead law enforcement agency in the task force filed 15 cases of human trafficking and related crimes. And whereas the Contra Costa Alliance to End Abuse recognizes human trafficking as a public health issue that is preventable by building individual, community, and societal understanding and resilience, eliminating social and historical inequities, and improving the environmental conditions where people are born, learn, live, work, play, age, and worship. And therefore, I, Kevin Wilk, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, on behalf of the Walnut Creek City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2026 as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And Katrina, if you'd like to please stand, and do you have a few words to say?
Sure, I do. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. I usually try when I come out to the cities to really highlight local work that's happening around the issue of human trafficking. And this year, I want to speak to an event that we've been working with Arm of Care and with the Walnut Creek Visitors Association to develop. This is an event that's targeting the business community and really trying to provide them with the tools and the information necessary to help identify human trafficking that might be taking place on the side of their business or passing through, that they might see something that's happening. So that will be taking place. Originally, it was planned for this month. We've moved it out to March to give a little more time to get more of the business folks involved and registered. But we're excited about that. It's an opportunity. As some of you may know, business people have some mandates under state law as far as training they have to provide to their staff and notices they need to post in their places of business. So we'll be providing that information to them, providing them with well-designed, attractive notices that they can post in their businesses and really try to strengthen those partnerships. This is in conjunction with Arm of Care, which is a local Walnut Creek nonprofit organization that provides therapeutic services, specifically art therapy, to survivors of human trafficking, as well as with an organization called Freedom Insight, which is based in the South Bay, but provides training to businesses on human trafficking throughout the Bay Area, the state of California, and nationally. So we're excited about this. We're excited about the degree of engagement we've had from the city and from the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Association. We'll keep you posted on the event. We're really looking forward to it. And it's being held out as an example this year of a great way of connecting with a local city to try to make progress in this area. So I really want to thank you and the city and the community of Walnut Creek for doing that with us.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, it's so important. And why don't we all take a picture?
That's not an easy document to read.
It's, we have practice.
It's a mouthful. I just say, this is about human trafficking. This is important. Thank you.
Right. Next item is a proclamation for Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is on January 27th, 2026. So I'll just read from the proclamation, then we'll have Rabbi Stein come down to accept it. Whereas the Holocaust was the systematic genocide of more than 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945, and included the state-sanctioned murder and persecution of millions of others, Roma and Sinti people, those with disabilities, homosexuals, Slavs, Poles, and members of anti-Nazi networks. This atrocity was a crime of shocking inhumanity representing a dark chapter in human history. Walnut Creek recognizes the heroism of those who aided the victims of the Nazi regime, including the many soldiers who liberated concentration camps and provided comfort to those suffering. And whereas the internationally recognized date for Holocaust Remembrance Day corresponds to the 27th day of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar and marks the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Holocaust Remembrance Day reminds us of the importance of teaching future generations about these atrocities and the acts of courage that inspire us to respond to hatred and inhumanity. Remembering the Holocaust compels us to confront anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred, ensuring such atrocities are never repeated. As Holocaust survivor Estelle Laughlin said, "Memory is what shapes us. Memory is what teaches us. We must understand that's where redemption is." And whereas the purpose of Holocaust Remembrance Day is to join together as a community to remember the Holocaust, to honor survivors who chose to rebuild their lives in Walnut Creek in the Bay Area, and to reflect the need to respect all people. And I, therefore, Kevin Wilk, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, on behalf of the Walnut Creek City Council, do hereby proclaim January 27th, 2026 as Holocaust Remembrance Day. We're going to have Rabbi Stein come on down, and I'm proud that we have taken a stand against hatred as well, not just individually, but as a community and a council. Good evening.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the council. As the mayor mentioned, I'm Rabbi Daniel Stein, Rabbi of Congregation B'nai Shalom in Walnut Creek, which has served the Jewish community and the broader Walnut Creek community for more than 60 years. It's my honor to accept this proclamation on behalf of the Jewish community. There are certainly enough lessons from the Nazi genocide of European Jewry to fill many lifetimes. I'd like to lift up just one this evening. The Israeli author Aaron Appelfeld, a child survivor of the Holocaust, wrote that amid the appropriate mourning for the genocide and its victims, one critical detail is often overlooked. He recalled that during all the years he spent in hiding and evading the Nazis, not a single day passed where he did not experience profound, abiding love. Even in the darkest hours, love was always present. I know we find ourselves living in challenging times. I'm grateful to be a part of a community that understands love in all its facets, a community that supports diversity, honors difference, and values a robust civic life in which all are included. Thank you for this proclamation, and thank you for all you do to make our city the wonderful place that it is.
Thank you very much. And being Jewish and the first Jewish mayor in Walnut Creek, I obviously take a personal interest in this as well. Thank you for being here, and why don't we all have a picture? Right. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull any item for discussion?
I have a question about one item, item 2H.
So why don't we pull that then?
And 2F, I also have a question on 2H.
All right, 2F and 2H. Does any member of staff wish to pull an item for discussion? Okay. Does any member of the public wish to comment on an item on the consent calendar? As a reminder, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make their remarks. Written comments submitted have been posted to the city's website for public review and are included in the meeting record but will not be separately read into the record. H, all right, we've got our H pulled already, so you'll come up when we review 2H. If we have a motion on the rest?
Move to adopt consent calendar items 2A through E, G, I, J, and K.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Susie, could you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
And Mayor Wilk.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Let's first pull item 2F.
All right, thank you. And I see Chief Hibbs on the way to the microphone. So this is 2F is a grant that we're applying for, $285,000 that would fund an additional 48 hours of traffic enforcement over the next year. I hope we get that grant. But in reading the, the body of the narrative and the description, it talks about staffing again. And I just, when I read it, it's disheartening, I guess. We're ideally staffed for 85 officers, right? But we're down, it says about 30%. I'm estimating that to be around 58 of the 85, roughly. So a couple questions. How are we covering the, that 30%? Are we doing it with overtime? And are we doing it completely? Like if we had all 85, would the service model look different than it does now?
Good evening, Mayor Welcome, members of the City Council. Ryan Hibbs, Chief of Police. Thank you for the question, Councilmember DeVinny. Right now, we're currently, to answer your question, we're authorized for 85 total sworn personnel. We have 78 as of Friday of those positions filled. So when you look at the deployment number accounts for the only folks that are left that are full duty active assignment. So in other words, they're acting in their full capacity. So for a variety of different reasons, the 18 number is basically it's injuries, it's long-term family leave, and it's people that are already in the academy. So they count toward our filled number, but not the deployed number.
Mm-hmm. And so are the folks that are able to serve right now, are they covering those who aren't with overtime? Is that how we're doing it?
Yes.
And are we covering all of the time, or is there a shortage? If we had 85, would it look different, or it would still be the same? It's just...
Well, for a little bit of context, our patrol model runs with 36 officers.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, it's staffed with 32 due to a number of injuries and long-term leave. So right now, being down 4, those positions are filled with overtime, but we have shortages in other divisions of the agency, such as our traffic bureau and our detective bureau, that are not generally need to be filled with overtime. Really, patrol is the only division that needs to be filled with overtime due to our staffing minimums, but we are filling those 4 slots with overtime, yes.
Those are being filled with overtime.
Yes.
But the additional, like, detectives and so forth, those are just, we're hoping to get them back into the force soon. Okay.
Yes.
So I know this has got to be not unique to Walnut Creek, right? It's a difficult job. There's lots of injuries. There's always going to be family issues as well. Is there anything that we can do, or measures that you think might help us to get closer to full staffing? I mean, I know we're hiring, but it just seems like such a big gap still.
Yeah, well, and part of the problem is that it's really nothing, to your point, it's nothing unique to our agency. I will note that we have 4 different lateral officers from other agencies in background right now, different stages of background right now. So those are, I point out the laterals only because they're a lot faster to be deployed than your entry-level trainee. But we also have 2 entry levels set up for the academy. So if that's the one taking place in April. So I'll back up because we actually have 4, 8, 10 total officers going to entry-level trainee officer positions going through the academy at various points this year. So at this point, once we get, so I mentioned the 4 that were in the academy that are set to graduate in February. They are actually on the books as filled positions, but they're not deployed yet. So once they get to us and go through field training, they will be part of our deployed strength, if you will. We're constantly getting people in the door, and our application pool hasn't dried up. It's been at least, I wouldn't say it flows well. It's not, we're getting a good number of qualified applicants, I'll put it that way. And In fact, we have an interview process set up for later this week to interview entry-level trainees. And so one other thing we've done, and I'll point this out, is that we've streamlined our hiring process. So typically when an agency brings in they host an entry-level oral board. They might have, in this case, we have, I think, 5 or 6 people that are on the list to be interviewed. Usually what happens is once those people have been deemed qualified candidates, they might move on to another interview, and then what happens after that is either an interview with the captains or an interview with the chief after that, but those interviews typically take place weeks after the initial interview. We streamlined it so that within one day, all of those interviews can take place, and we can move people into backgrounds very quickly. And to be frank, I mean, basically from the first job interview for an entry-level candidate to successful completion of the academy and successful completion of the field training program, you're looking at anywhere between 12 and 15 months if everything goes smoothly. So with that type of timeline, it doesn't, it just takes time to stand people up, but we are actively recruiting, and we're getting good candidates.
Yeah. Is there anything on the recovery side that, there seems like there's a fair number, almost 20% out on injury and so forth. Is there anything on that end that?
Total coin flip. At this point, it really is. It depends on what the injury is, the physical condition of the officer prior to the injury, the recovery time itself. If it's a ligament or a muscle, it just depends on what the actual injury is. We do have some shorter term injuries, and it's not all doom and gloom. We do actually have some people coming back from family leave here very shortly. So that number will go higher. Sometimes it's just, a perfect storm.
All right. Well, it's a priority for the council and keeping the city safe, and we appreciate what you're doing. And I just hope that we can move the needle there and get those numbers up.
We're working on it.
All right, thank you.
Certainly.
Make a motion?
Oh, okay.
No, I have a question. It looks like the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question is really, I know in 2020-21 we were struggling a little bit with the laterals, and it sounds like that has really turned around in the last 5 or 6 years.
I would agree. I think it's come in waves. So sometimes it's time of year. Sometimes it's when there are openings that we post, and sometimes we're lucky enough just to get a wave of really good lateral applicants, and we're kind of in that right now.
And we're getting folks that have good experience and come from a good fit.
Yes, and that is one thing that throughout the interview process, the captains are really good about picking people out that are going to be a really good fit. I've developed, I think, a really good feel for picking out folks that are going to be a really good fit. And what I don't want to do is lose our strong police culture in bringing folks in from other agencies just to stand up a trainee quickly.
Okay.
We're not going to lower our standards, which is part of the other. We're getting good qualified applicants, but we have to weed out a number of people who, well-intentioned, but maybe their background isn't suited for policing.
Thank you. And I appreciate all that you guys have done to really develop such a strong culture. I really appreciate it.
I'd like to actually ask about the item on the agenda, which is what is the purpose of the grant that we're applying for, and how would it improve the police department's work for the community?
That's an excellent question. So we're asking only for overtime dollars to fund 6 different 8-hour targeted enforcement shifts that are traffic related only. So we're not asking for equipment, and we're not asking for positions. This is simply an ask, and it is admittedly a little high, but we decided that maybe that was the better route to go as opposed to asking for a lower number and maybe getting fully funded. There's a chance that this number is fully funded by the Office of Traffic Safety, but we don't know what the number is going to be, so we're just kind of shooting high and hoping for the best at this point.
Thank you very much.
That would like to.
I move to adopt item 2F.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Susie, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Wilk.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so now let's go to 2H.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is an item to appropriate and transfer $1.75 million for from the Glennet Community Benefits funding from the Glennet Heather Farm project for Ignacio Valley Road traffic signal project improvements, and I have a couple of questions about it.
Hello, Smadar Boardman, City Engineer.
I remember that during the conversation about this development project, there were very concerns about the traffic on Marchbank at Kinross, the intersection, cut-through traffic that might start at Ignacio and cut through the Heather Farm Association. How will these funds be deployed? And for, I think it's 4 intersections maybe. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. So to address your first question, there are 4 intersections. One of them is Marchbanks and Kinross. There is access from Ignacio Valley Road at both Marchbanks and at Kinross. I know that during this development, when we were discussing the conveyance of that property to the developer of, it's now called the Glen, there was discussion about what the impacts might be at that intersection of Marchbanks and Kinross and how people might choose to take Kinross to get to this new development rather than using Marchbanks, which would be, it's actually a public street. There is a portion of Kinross that's actually private that is owned by the HOA, or it's owned by the HOA. So one of the improvements that we were looking to do was to calm traffic at the intersection of Marchbanks and Kinross. It's already an always stop controlled intersection, but just adding some kind of like horizontal element. We're with the funds that we have available, we're going to do the best we can to stretch it. But this location, we were looking at trying to do some kind of traffic circle, some kind of circle treatment, just to really make it not as enticing, especially for larger vehicles, to try and take Kinross directly north and into the new development.
Thank you.
And then the other 3 intersections are Marchbanks and Ignacio, which is Marchbanks, Tampico, and then the Kinross, La Casa Villa intersection at Ignacio, and then San Carlos and Ignacio. And those 3 intersections have some operational improvements for Ignacio Valley Road as a whole along the corridor, as well as some specific safety improvements for the side streets and better access for Marchbanks itself.
Thank you very much, Smadar.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions from the dais?
I had pulled this item as well. Pretty much had those questions, but I also just for those watching, this was money, because I know it says community benefit, but this was money that we, with a very a certain level of detail, kind of allocated ahead of time to these targeted areas, right? So that's how we arrived at doing this project with this community benefit money. It wasn't like discretionary, like we'll spend it anywhere in the city for community benefit. It was designed to be for this location. Is that accurate?
I think I'll defer to City Attorney on the specific language.
I could speak to it as well. This was part of the negotiations with the Speaker Development Company as part of the development for the Glen project, as Smadar noted, and the city sold a small piece or strip of property, and this was part of that arrangement. And the goal was to help address some of the potential traffic impacts that may result as part of this project, and some of the concerns that came forward from the very active neighborhood as well to help address those. So yes, it was very specific and negotiated specifically for this.
All right. Any members of the public would like to make a comment?
Good evening, Jan Warren, the Woodlands, and I might be able to catch her in a break or something. I would like to find out when and where I can actually see the drawings. I'm pretty visual and I'm listening, but I can't keep up to where we are and where the circle is, and appreciate knowing when and how I could just see the drawings.
Thank you, Jan.
So Mayor, I'll ask the question of staff. Can we get a little timeline as to what, when we might publicly be able to view sometimes traffic signal improvements are electronic, but when we might be able to see something, or the public?
Sure. So the project was, it is in our capital budget. Right now, what this council is taking action on is actually taking the money from one fund and putting it into the capital budget, appropriating those funds. The project itself, once we have that funding, we can start design. We are going to be doing, separately we did, city staff reached out and was able to win grant funds for additional intersections along Ignacio Valley Road for traffic signal improvements. So we're going to try and use that process and tee off of it in order to get a design completed and then move into construction. But this is, from a timeline perspective, the design probably wouldn't start until within the next year, and then construction would follow after that.
And the Kinross Marchbank intersection that is more interior to the, closer to the project, is not a traffic signal improvement project. It's more physical and construction and narrowing and et cetera. When would that be? Is it on the same timeline path?
It could be. I think, when we do the design, we're going to be looking at concrete and some of those other physical improvements too. But the traffic signal work is a little more specific type of work. So we could always break that out first and phase it, looking at other designs in the area. But at least for now, the plan was to kind of include everything.
So the capital project would be sometime in the next 6 to 9 months? Or are we thinking further out?
Yeah, the design, we would be able to bring on a consultant to assist with the design in the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks,
I'm
Pilar.
happy to move the item.
Any other public comment on this? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. If there's any other comments or a motion.
I move to appropriate and transfer $1.75 million of transportation improvements, community benefit funding received from the Glen at Heather Farm into the capital budget Ignacio Valley Road traffic signal project.
All right.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Susie?
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Darling.
Aye.
And Mayor Welk.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. And next, we have public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be allocated at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting if necessary. Written comments submitted have been posted to the city's website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be separately read into the record. At this time, I'll note that the time is 6:35, and we'll take public comment on items not on the agenda until approximately 7:05, although I have a feeling we're not going to need that amount of time. And then the remainder of any such comments at the end of the open session portion of the meeting. And that's, so if we can have any public comment that come up, that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
I put it on one card. Okay. I would like clarity on the new soccer fields, and more particularly the new signs. I first noticed the signs going down Ignacio, west, I guess. And I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then a few days later, I decided to get on my bicycle, which was scary. And so I was coming down the path and decided I'd gone far enough, and I got off, and I saw at least 6 signs, because I hadn't been at any grand opening or anything. And my concern is, I had the impression that we were paying for, you're frowning, paying for the fields, the new soccer fields, with Measure O money. And I understood that the soccer club was contributing a certain amount to make that happen, but I never heard any discussion about the names and the money associated with whatever they donated. And so I'd like to know, did Measure O have money into it? What was the percentage? And 5 or 10 years from now, and if we're looking at signs, who's going to remember that the residents of the city, paid for a lot of it with Measure O?
Thank you, Jan. Next speaker.
Hello. Hello. My name is Barbara Yennis. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1996. I want to wish you all a productive and happy New Year. Also, in my written comments, I attached 3 pictures of the Paraiso Trail area of Lime Ridge Open Space. The June 2024 cancellation of the planned high-speed bicycle flow trail allows equestrians, pedestrians, horses, cattle to now enjoy that southwest portion of Lime Ridge without being disturbed by high-speed bike traffic. And native plants and wildlife can also freely exist in that area without any destruction. For those of you that contributed to the cancellation of that project, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. However, we need to remember that protection and conservation of our open space is still at risk. Single-track trails prohibit bicycle traffic of any type per municipal codes, yet there is constant bike traffic occurring on these single-track trails. Staff made their own decision that they'll do no enforcement of the bike traffic on these trails. Pedestrians and equestrians are now left to fend for themselves when they use these trails, which are specifically designed for them. Native plants are snuffed out. Wildlife continues to be disturbed. Also in January of this year, current month, I've seen myself at least 3 occurrences of motorcycles in the open space in Lime Ridge. So with the new year of 2026, I'd like to call out to the new mayor, council members, and other city leaders to act now to ensure that staff enforces open space municipal codes on single-track trails. Please save our precious open spaces for current and future generations. And thank you very much for your service to our city. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Barbara. And we did receive your emails as well.
Okay.
I appreciate you sending them in.
Thank you.
Do we have any more public commenters? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I would like to ask the city manager if there's any clarity that can be given over the Heather Farm signs.
Yeah, good evening, Dan Buckshire, City Manager. Yes, just as a brief recap, you may recall that there was a formal agreement that the city entered into that your council approved with the Walnut Creek Soccer Club for them to raise at least $1.5 million towards the fields, which they have a payment schedule and they are on track, may even potentially pay ahead of schedule based upon their fundraising. There were allowances in that agreement for signage for donors and particularly for certain dollar thresholds, and that's what we're seeing. I think more specifically, I'm guessing Ms. Warren may be referring to the UC San Francisco, or UC San Francisco sports fields sponsorship that is on Ignacio Valley Road. That was all reviewed with staff in terms of the size and the approach to that. So that has been planned. You know, per her point about Measure O signage, we have had signage up during construction, but I think she raises a good point of, do we want something more permanent out there highlighting that the fields and or eventually the Community and Aquatic Center and or other structures that are funded by Measure O to have some type of ongoing signage. And I think that's something we could consider if that's of interest.
Thank you. I think it is always good to know who paid for what.
Could you also clarify that in addition to the $1.5 million that is being raised by the soccer club and the significant contribution of UCSF, what amount Measure O paid toward the ball fields? It wasn't small.
The total project cost was about $7 million, so the remainder was funded primarily by Measure O.
So Measure O funded about $5.5 million of the
Roughly.
$7 million.
There may have been some other park and lieu fees and that sort of thing allocated, but the vast majority was Measure O.
Thank you.
And I imagine we'll be seeing quite a bit of Measure O signage with the Heather Farm Swimming Center and Community Center construction coming up. Thank you very much. All right, this brings us to our council member and staff announcements, reports on activities or requests, and council member reports on AB 1234 activities. And I'll start with the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, the council held a series of closed sessions. There were no reportable actions from the closed sessions.
Thank you.
And just one brief update. I'm happy to report your councilman may be aware that annually city staff does a fundraiser for the food bank of Contra Costa and Solano County, and this year we raised just over $7,000, which provides over 14,000 meals for those in need by working with the food bank, and just wanted to recognize the efforts and thank all of the city staff who participated, and thank Kathy Meyer and Carwin Larson for heading this up and running that program. It's nice that we have this annual tradition of doing this.
Thank you. Good update. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Councilmember Darling.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I thank you to my fellow council members. We had talked a while ago about helping the Trinity Center Winter Nights shelter with their dinner service. So we agreed to do that, and we did that last night. All 5 of us got together with sharp knives and hot stoves, and we did a great job. In spite of the fact that the chicken wasn't quite cooking as fast as we thought it would. But it was really enjoyable to cook for the people at Trinity Center, and I think it was a great way for all of us to honor Martin Luther King Day and the commitment to service, and just visit with some folks at the winter shelter. And I really appreciated everybody's willingness to chip in, and the price impacts we saw at the end of last fiscal year. We have recovered considerably this year. Prices have really softened, and so we're back in the black. And we are looking at starting our budget process for the budget that will be adopted April 1st, and looking at the potential for a rate reduction. Our generating costs are fairly low. The challenge will be that we, in addition to the cost of generating the electricity, people have to pay for a PG&E transmission charge, and then this other, it's the bane of our existence, called the PCIA, the Power Charge and Difference Adjustment, and that is the blood money that we are paying to PG&E for leaving them. And PG&E is pursuing cases in front of the California Public Utilities Commission to significantly increase that charge. We are continuing to appeal the charges. One of the things that PG&E is trying to do is retroactively raise the charge back in 2025, and we are of the opinion that it is not sound fiscal or legal precedent to raise rates in arrears. But we are going to be continuing to struggle with that this year, so there will be future announcements and whatnot on how we're dealing with that. And then the fun thing is Gabe Quinto has been the co-chair of our board. Chanel Scales-Preston, our county supervisor, is the chair of the board for MCE. Gabe is now the California League of Cities president this year, and so has stepped down. So I volunteered to step up and am the vice chair now. So it will be an entertaining year, and I'll have a lot of interesting experiences with that. So that's my report.
Thank you for the update. Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everyone. A few things to report. Mayor Pro Tem Francois and I represent the city of Walnut Creek on the board of Recycle Smart, which takes care of your black bin, your blue bin, and your green bin, your trash, your recyclables, and your organic waste. And we will be having our annual retreat next Tuesday and discussing the forward and the future, and also approving our rates for the coming year, which starts March 1 and will continue through February. So our commercial and residential rates will be rising slightly, mostly to cover the costs of all the services that we deliver. The liaison to Walnut Creek Sister Cities International Organization, and they are currently in there's 2 things they're working on. First is the planning for the visits from the students from Sciafolk, Hungary, and Noceto, Italy, will be coming in the very last few days of March and the first week of April, so we should be prepared for that. And then also they are in the process of recruiting a new class of youth ambassadors for 26-27, and they're looking for about 24 of our 7th grade, rising 8th graders, but 7th graders who will be in 8th grade next year, who will travel and represent our city to Noceto and Sciafolk in the fall, and then have the youth ambassadors for those, our sister cities, visit us in the spring of 2027. I'm also represent the city on, or 2, the Diablo Regional Arts Association. Their first meeting of 2026 will be in early February. But you don't need to wait for them to have a meeting to be able to enjoy the current exhibit at the Bedford Gallery, which is called, it's the work of Viola Fry, who she's now deceased, but she is a longtime local artist originally from Lodi, California, and she did paintings, and then she did 3D sculptures, and some of which are about 11 feet tall in the gallery. So you'll not want to miss this exhibit. It is currently open, and it continues through April 5th, and it's open Wednesdays through Sundays from noon until 6 p.m., and then on nights of the theater, it's also open early. And I will mention lastly that I am involved in the League of California Cities, and I have been appointed to the Revenue and Taxation Policy Committee this year. And we have meetings this week in Sacramento, and a key on our agenda is a discussion of the recommendations of how do we address the inequities that have resulted from online shopping. And the way the distribution of the sales tax works is different. If I buy a sweater for $100 at Macy's, we're going to pay 8.5 cents in tax. We'll get a penny of that $100, or we'll get $1 of that $100, and we will get 50 cents in our Measure O tax. But if I find it at Macy's, but it's the wrong size or the wrong color, and I order it online, and this is what I did right after Christmas, that sales tax distribution will primarily not come here. The penny that will probably go to the warehouse, the city of the warehouse where from which the sweater is delivered to my house. So we need to have a conversation about how this is working in the brick and mortar versus online sales world. And thank you very much. I will see you in Sacramento.
Yes. That's a hugely important issue. I'm glad you brought it up, Councilmember Silva. When I speak in front of groups and they ask, what can we do? There's so much frustration going on they can't control. They go, what can we do to help? I say, shop in person. Shop in person is the biggest way to help. It goes right to our bottom line of tax revenue, and we keep all of that percentage.
Or eat in person.
Do it in person, whatever it is. Councilmember DeVinny.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Silva, I wish you the best of luck in those negotiations. It's an important topic. So I don't have a lot to discuss this time. I have had only enjoyable, fun events to attend the last couple weeks. The swearing-in ceremony for our police officers, and again, congratulations to Chief Hibbs. And I think we had a congratulations to Captain Slater and Captain Connor, but they just stepped out. So, and then the new hires, and again, enjoyed going to the Trinity Center last night for Martin Luther King and preparing meals for the homeless there.
And I had a quick question. The Visit Walnut Creek effort on human trafficking, do we know what the new date is?
Did she mention that at all
said
during her
March.
presentation?
Yeah,
I don't know if
still
it's a
TBD on
hard
that.
date.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say it's March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a few things. First of all, I don't know how late it is you can say Happy New Year, but I guess it is Happy New Year. We haven't met since December. Right, February 1, all right. So one of the things that I did just before our break was one of the most fun things. Walnut Acres has, their first grade classes have gingerbread cities, and I was asked to cut the ribbon on these different classrooms' gingerbread cities. And so very, very cute. I was asked almost by every class the same question: how much do you make as the mayor? And I had the same answer: not enough. So we did have the Chick-fil-A opening. How much is not enough? Yeah, so yeah, $600 a month. That's what we make up here. I think we all go into a loss by all the things that we end up going to and paying for. We did have the Chick-fil-A opening today on Oak Grove Road. So this is the first Chick-fil-A that does not have a drive-through in the country. It's a new neighborhood concept. They've started it here, and there were maybe 50, 60 people that showed up from staff, from our police department, and a lot of corporate people from Chick-fil-A as well. So They've hired 75 people, local employees. 11 of them are high school students for their first job on their resumes. So we look forward to seeing how this should be opening within the next 6 months to a year, so we'll be hearing more about those too. I also presented several Eagle Scouts in the Court of Honor, which I'd forgotten. When you're mayor, you get to do those things and see 11 or 12.
I'm glad you're doing it.
Well, it's 11 or 12 years of the work that it is to become an Eagle Scout. And they are dedicated because they were there for this Court of Honor during the 49ers game. Dedication. And lastly, I want to talk about County Connection. Well, yeah, they didn't miss much. I want to talk about County Connection, where I'm the liaison to the board. A couple of things happening that are important to note. Both chargers for the inductive charging are down in Walnut Creek at the BART station due to power supply board issues. The new power supply boards have been ordered. That's the good news. Unfortunately, those electric boards, we're not running the electric buses until the parts come in. They're in the process of shipping, and then within 1 to 2 days of implementation, they'll be good to go. That's the good news. They're being shipped from Asia. That's the less than good news. Also, Clipper 2.0 cards recently came out a couple of weeks ago. There have been some issues with them being in the cloud and accessing accounts. The issue is being resolved. In fact, I believe it's actually been corrected imminently. Credit card usage with machines all work properly. One issue that's come up that BART is still figuring out how to deal with. Anybody that takes BART on a regular basis, it has been, of course, that you've got the card and the money is stored on the card. You tap the card, gates open up, you walk on in. Well, now because the money is stored in the cloud, you tap the card, it's got to go up to the cloud. It accesses how much money you have, comes back down, and there's a delay of about 1 to 2 seconds to get in. Yes. and this. So that is trying to be compacted right now, because anybody that has gone during commute time to San Francisco or back, and I did that for 10 years, there is a rush at those gates. And if it's a delay by 1 second to get through, that is backing way up into the escalators. So that is being resolved. I will follow up with that in my next meeting or two when we hear resolving issues there. That's my report. Which brings us to consideration item. So it's the agenda agenda is the consideration of the proposed 2026 legislative agenda. I invite Casey Elliott, Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer from Townsend Public Affairs, to provide the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Casey Elliott, Vice President, Townsend Public Affairs. Here tonight to provide a brief legislative update, kind of a wrap-up of last year, a little bit of preview ahead of this year, just to provide a little bit of context for which we will be considering, thank you, the legislative agenda in front of you. Just by a way of reminder from numbers of last year there were about 2,400 bills introduced in Sacramento, which is about a typical year. I mean, it's kind of a normal bill load. Of that, a little over 900 were passed through by the legislature. And then ultimately, the governor signed just under 800 of those bills and vetoed the remainder for a veto rate of about 13%. I would note that this was probably slightly higher of a veto rate than Newsom's had in his. Usually kind of hangs out around the 8 to 10%. A lot of the veto's messages this year were based on budgetary conditions. So I think that may be a theme that we see continue going on into 2026. But just kind of as we look back at the numbers of last year's session, that's where we were. A number of big issues dominated. Obviously, the early part of the year is generally more focused on the state budget. As you'll recall, the state was operating, looking at a $12 billion deficit that was addressed through a number of different maneuvers, borrowing, reserves, cost shifts, and then there were some of the more substantive items that were contained as part of the budget, including starting to allocate out the Proposition 4 resources bond dollars. There were any number of trailer bills that kind of continued also from federal legislation that, again, we'll start to see pop up here in 2026. From a policy standpoint, as always, a large number of issues, just kind of picking some of the larger ones that kind of dominated the conversations in Sacramento. As I noted in the middle there, CEQA, there was a number of CEQA actions that was largely done through budget. A large number, any number of years, CEQA conversations in Sacramento generally revolve around sports stadiums and whatnot. This year it kind of moved in to areas of housing, vegetation management, a number of projects. This probably is, in the 20 years that I've been in Sacramento, it's probably the most extensive CEQA revisiting that we've seen in just efforts to kind of streamline existing projects through. So that took up a large portion, again, was factored into the budget. Cap and invest, cap and trade reauthorization was also tied in through the budget, extending that program out as well as putting in a new expenditure plan. That generates about $4 billion a year outside of the state's general fund that then gets reinvested into any number of programs aimed at improving air quality, strategic building, transportation, so any number of programs. They modified that spending formula slightly, so there's still a good chunk, $1 billion off the top to high-speed rail. There's now $1 billion that's going to be discretionary for the legislature, and then there's kind of a descending order of priority programs that would get reinvested into. So we'll start seeing that the first year of the new spending schedule go into effect in calendar year 26. Then there was a number of issues, immigration response, congressional redistricting that were in direct response to activities that were going on in D.C. Obviously, on the congressional redistricting and Prop 50 passage, we'll see that start being implemented in the 26 election cycle for Congress. While that won't impact the city directly here, Congressman DeSaulnier obviously retains the bulk of the bulk of the city in his district. Any number of places throughout the state are going to be dealing with a lot more politics, as effectively we're going to have 4 or 5 additional districts that were drawn with the intent of moving partisan representation in those areas. So we'll start seeing that manifest this year. And then at the very end of the year in November, we had the official changeover in Senate leadership. So the Senate has a new pro tem, Monique Limon, out of the Santa Barbara area. She took over that position in November, had her formal kind of swearing in when the legislature convened here in January. She's since announced new committee leadership, new majority leaders. So it will just be a different set of priorities in the Senate. Though Pro Tem Limon was fairly well aligned with the previous Pro Tem Mike McGuire. So we'll be interested to see just how she operates the House versus the previous Pro Tem. When we start to look at the issues that may be upcoming here in 26, as I noted, the beginning of the year is when we see the governor's January budget. He released his budget on I think it was the 8th or 9th. According to the governor and the Department of Finance, the state's looking at a $2.9 billion deficit. That's on about $250 billion general fund. The LAO has a very different number, which I'll get into in just a minute. From the governor's budget perspective, he largely addresses the deficit through a single maneuver of pausing a $2.8 billion payment into the state's rainy day fund. So effectively, the way the governor's January budget was released, it's balanced just on the bat. Also, as we look into issues that are likely to pop up before the legislature this year, always housing and affordability. Housing, I think last year there were 60 housing bills signed into law. Obviously, last year a lot of the effort was on SB 79. We already have one SB 79 cleanup bill. I anticipate we'll see another SB 79 cleanup bill before February 20th rolls around. Special funds. The major difference between the Department of Finance and in the LAO on their budgets is the revenue projection. In November, the LAO had anticipated the state would be looking at somewhere near an $18 billion budget deficit for the current year. As noted, the governor has the deficit pegged much lower, and that's almost directly attributable to the amount of revenue. So over the current year, the budget year we're in, the proposed budget year, so over the 2-year window, the state Department of Finance is projecting an additional $42 billion in revenue over the LAO, largely driven by AI, capital gains, tech sector. LAO is much more cautious on those revenues developing, and the Department of Finance would say, we understand that's a risky revenue assessment and we will deal with that when it doesn't materialize. So that's largely where those two differences come from. As I noted earlier, the $2.8 billion true-up, suspension of the true-up fund to the rainy day fund is largely how the governor proposes to address the budget deficit. That does still leave approximately $14.5 billion in the rainy day fund that the state has. This budget has no proposed new revenue streams, no new taxes. There are various tax proposals being discussed for the November ballot, but those are not from the administration. They're not part of this budget, so there's no new significant revenues. And then the Department of Finance, in acknowledgement of various impacts coming to California from federal decisions, some of the revenue uncertainties, has really deferred until the May revise to make a lot of their decisions. So the January budget we saw didn't really have any new major programs, a lot of expansions. As much as there is alignment there, allows for quicker operation and quicker turning around of positions. And then also that will be shared with the city's legislative representatives, so they have an understanding and knowledge of the city's priorities. So as bills are being introduced, as policies are coming forward, they'll understand beforehand where the city's positions are, and that engagement will begin immediately. As we look at some of the specific items with proposed changes within the document, tried to kind of create a quick summary of just some of those items here. You'll notice within the public safety section, there's some revised language related to Proposition 36. That really just is more of a reflection of where we are in the Prop 36 conversation from developing legislative policy that later became Proposition 36 and some of the other public safety bills that were taken up to now really a full implementation of what the voters have approved. So just really kind of modifying that language to just kind of better reflect where Prop 36 is within the process. Similarly, language was added related to housing processes, planning processes that align with the city's housing element, as well as opposing conflicting policies that the state and regional levels may have, which happens. So obviously trying to encourage all of our partners at the state and local agencies to kind of work in more of a coordinated fashion, so that local governments of the city can deliver on what those priorities are. There was some cleanup language within the transportation section, some removing of some kind of just older language related to some overlays, some cap seals, and just on kind of some general cleanup within the transportation section. There was also new language specifically calling out increased safety for all roadway users, including e-bike operators. I do anticipate this year we will see more e-bike related legislation. We've already seen two new bills introduced on e-bikes within the first week of the legislative session. In our conversations, I think there's probably at least 2 or 3 more. So definitely becoming a broader issue. So wanted to make sure there was flexibility within the city's platform to respond to legislation related to e-bikes. Then there was again some cleaning up of just some duplicative language within the environmental sustainability section. And then there was some inclusion of language related to affordability on electric utility service within the sustainability section. And then I believe Joe's going to speak to a couple of additional amendments that are being proposed as well.
Thank you, Casey. Good evening, council members, Mayor Wilk. Joe Carrozza, Assistant to the City Manager. I do want to talk about a few additional amendments that are not included in the materials you have in front of you. These came in from a few council members and are some suggested changes. So the first one I want to go over, and I apologize, it's quite small on screen. 3C. So item 3C is a very minor adjustment. It says cap and trade, but due to some rebranding done in late 2025, moving that to cap and invest funding. Then in the final paragraph, a few adjustments to reflect not just relationship building with state legislators, but also federal elected officials. And so there's some adjustments there, but we did add in to the final line for state legislative activities, TPA will provide support and talking points since Townsend Public Affairs supports us for state legislative activities. So I'll give folks a second to see that before we move over to the next slide.
Question about that. I mean, obviously we want to have good relationships with everyone. I see that we interact on a regular basis with local and state officials. Are we interacting with the federal elected officials here?
Yeah.
Pardon me. Okay.
All right, and then the next series of adjustments are for 4C and 4D, which is in the sustainability section. The first adjustment I want to bring attention to is the Marine Clean Energy, MCE. They are now referring to themselves as MCE, formerly Marine Clean Energy, so just making that adjustment to be reflected within the agenda. And then made some additional adjustments, which is all that red that you see there, to 4C and 4D to be reflective of some MCE legislative support topics. So I'm going to go ahead and just read this, the adjustments, so that I can share what the suggested changes are. The city supports additional funding, we're talking about 4C, for energy-saving programs and funding for programs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The city joined MCE, formerly Marine Clean Energy, to offer residents and businesses additional, cleaner, and greener electric energy choices, and to increase local control over energy procurement and development, expand consumer choice, and provide access to renewable energy at stable and competitive rates. As a member of MCE, the city opposes restrictive legislation and regulations targeting community choice energy programs, including improper cost allocation, policies that unfairly disadvantage CCAs or their customers, interference with local energy governance, and actions that diminish CCA procurement, policymaking, and decision-making autonomy. So there's some additions there. Then in 4D, a few more additions. So the city supports legislation and decisions that give local jurisdictions access to utility energy data and ensure transparency and accountability, and ensure utilities respond to local government's unique data needs to support informed local decision-making, energy planning, and consumer protection. And so before I pass back to Casey to take any additional questions, the recommended action is now is to approve the 2026 state legislative agenda, inclusive of the additional amendments presented today on those last two slides. All right. Thank you, and I'll go ahead and pass back to Casey.
This part's easy. Any questions?
All right, do we have any questions? We'll start with Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the work, both, well, in Sacramento, but sometimes your work also lops over into our federal advocacy efforts, so I appreciate all of it.
Of course.
We had a comment from the public, and the comment was made about the grant funding that we were seeking for overtime pay for traffic enforcement, but really, it also relates to, by extension, any technology that we might put into play. And he was, the community member was suggesting we try to get ourselves added into the pilot program for the, I guess, digital license plate reading program. And I ran that to ground 18 months ago through the League of California Cities, and the answer I got was, it's not an open season for anybody who wants to participate can. It was a select number of cities that the state legislature selected as a pilot to ensure that it was working properly and would not be misused at the local level. But can you add on to that?
Yeah, there's the legislature uses they're very loose in their use of word pilot program, so it can mean a number of different things. Generally, I would say maybe within the last 10 years or so, when we use kind of the broader pilot program in really transportation-related technology instances. So whether it's digital license plates, red light cameras, speed enforcement cameras, there's been typically that committee prefers the approach of specifying which specific cities or counties or agencies those pilot projects will apply to, as opposed to maybe the state's going to set up a pilot program and receive applications. So typically in the Transportation Committee, back definitely when it was under Jim Frazier, the former Assemblymember Frazier, Laura Friedman, because the speed enforcement camera has Glendale in it, which is why they're kind of the only small city. She was the chair at the time. But typically they do it that way. So they'll put sunsets on the bills. And so typically when the sunset dates come up, those pilot entities will look to expand the bill, and then we can kind of had a broader conversation. So yes, most of those within the transportation space are defined pilot programs. But when those come back up, then there may be opportunities to expand.
Or they make them available across the state.
Correct, yeah.
That the legislation worked.
Yeah.
These are the rules.
Exactly.
Go forward and prosper.
Exactly, yes.
Councilmember Devine.
Thank you, and what a fun job. Just curious, do you think this year, I know last year the subject of ICE coming in to cities and facial coverings was a big issue. Do you expect to see additional work in that area, or?
Yes. Yeah. The short answer is yes. So last year there were a couple of different ones. The SB 627, Senator Wiener's bill regarding the face coverings, as well as Senator Perez had a bill. I'm gonna butcher the number, so I won't guess. On identification, those were signed into law. Those are being challenged federally. So depending upon how those court cases work out, I could see there being some follow-up legislation on the state side. There was also legislation related to K through 12 and community college districts about requirements that warrants or specific things that ICE would need in order to gain access into private campuses. So we saw some of those legislation. We've already seen this last week, Assemblymember Isaac Bryan in LA introduced a bill that would prohibit local law enforcement from holding second jobs with ICE. I think that we will continue to see legislation in response to some of these activities, whether it's protests, whether it's ICE carrying out duties. So yeah, I do think that will continue. Sacramento, it's going to sound worse than it is, but Sacramento is largely reactive, so it kind of depends upon what
ICE thinks up to do next.
Exactly, kind of what the and really, like I said, since we're in bill introduction deadline, I do anticipate some of the things that we're seeing going on in Minnesota and other places in the state as we're into bill development time. We may see some of those things, legislation in response to some of those activities. But yeah, I do think that'll continue to be a topic.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other big flare that went up was when PG&E substations in San Francisco shut down, and all of a sudden PG&E, San Francisco's rattling the saber about taking over PG&E. Do you think that's got any legs to it, or your guess is as good as ours?
Yeah, I mean, I could say I don't work with the city and county of San Francisco,
That's
so
a good thing.
I don't know where they would get that money. That seems like a very expensive endeavor to take over that. But I do think energy procurement, energy will continue to be a conversation. There's already conversations related to extending Diablo Canyon again. Feels like we just had that conversation a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think there are some. I think there will be legislation this year by any number of members that are seeking election to different offices that we may see legislation of things that maybe play well really well locally, but maybe once you extrapolate that out to a legislative thing. So I could see in San Francisco, if you're maybe running for Congress in there, that might be a bill that plays well really locally, but from a state policy perspective, I don't know that there's a lot of appetite for that.
Okay, and then on the CEQA streamlining, I know there's been a lot of discussion about certain types of projects getting streamlined and whatnot. The battery energy storage facilities after the Moss Landing fire, are you still seeing, battery storage being, if we're going to get rid of Diablo Canyon, we need batteries? And
I think that last year there was, like I said, there was a lot. There was a lot done, and I think that last year is going to open the floodgates for CEQA requests. Whether the legislature does any more or not, I'm a little. I tend to think they won't. That said, the California Chamber of Commerce, I know, is pursuing a significant CEQA initiative that they're trying to place on the 2026 ballot, which would definitely streamline any number of types of projects beyond what the legislature's done, both in terms of review timelines up front as well as litigation timelines on the back end. So we may still see some more CEQA activity, but I think it may be more driven through the initiative process than from the legislature this year.
Yeah, at the Chamber of Commerce this month, we saw the rough outline of what they were proposing, and it seemed like a work in progress because it included things that I would not normally think of as being easily CEQA exempt. But
yeah, and I think from a local government perspective too, a lot of the timelines that they're putting in would be very challenging. It would require very quick, in some cases, depending upon project size, very rapid review of projects with then limited ability to go back and look at other components as projects develop. So, yeah, there's a lot within what they're looking at to digest there.
yeah, I think things that conveyed water through the Delta were in there. Like, oh, that's fun. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Have fun this year.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, Prop 36, I know that it wasn't fully funded, and part of the rationale where there was budget cuts and cost constraints and things, but it was a pretty widely, popular measure. So, were there other? What do you make of that? Yeah.
Well, the governor definitely was not a fan of Prop 36, but I think that from a legislative basis, I'm pretty sure it passed in every single legislative district, right? So I mean, from a legislative perspective, it was widely popular amongst the public. Within legislators, it was popular. The governor's January budget this year is, I would say, relatively silent on funding of Prop 36. The Department of Finance Director, Joe Steffenshaw, was asked a direct question about the funding of Prop 36 during the budget release, and he kind of talked about savings from Prop 47 and moving money around. But I think the administration is going to kind of go kicking and screaming on this one. I do think we'll see legislative leadership, given the broad support for Prop 36, really try to push for full funding, particularly when we start talking about some of the overlapping populations that are priorities for the administration, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, homeless populations that are also impacted by some of the funding that could be, forwarded through Prop 36. So I think that as we get into May revise, we'll see more of that conversation, but it definitely is a higher priority for the legislature than it is for the administration, which then tends to make me think it'll be subject of a negotiation as we get into May revise.
What do you think their big critique or their
Well, I think the governor just didn't agree with the overall philosophy of Prop 36. I think, increase, and it's hard to say he wanted more time in corrections facilities. There was just a lot going on, and a lot of it honestly was political, and it was not the proposal that the administration wanted. So I think that maybe in 27 we'll maybe see some more full funding for Prop 36 as we move into a new administration, kind of where that is, because some of the issues that have really prevented the full funding of Prop 36 won't be present anymore.
Okay, and then I just had a question about the pilot programs. There's a few obviously pilot programs going on, and is it prohibitive that cities? I mean, do you see these programs getting extended sometimes to other jurisdictions, or?
Yeah,
because for example, like Marin has their e-bike pilot program, and one of the ideas would be, might we be able to join something like that? And I know it's also an issue with the speed cameras and maybe the red light cameras and so forth. So. Is there an
yeah, we
to
definitely
that,
see those. I mean, a lot of times when those issues pop up as pilot programs, they start as broader proposals and then kind of get whittled down as they move. I think we would start, the conversation wouldn't be about opening that up when
You don't
like,
see
for-
exceptions prior to that time.
No, I mean, because like
other
on bills like that one in particular, just because I know I had some colleagues working on that one. That one started as a broader proposal that would have been applicable statewide, and then given concerns, it was narrowed back down. So I know that there would be any number of agencies locally, any number of stakeholders at the state level that would like to see certain programs open back up. I think e-bikes is definitely one that we hear more of. I think when Marin kind of worked their legislation in their bill, I don't want to say e-bikes was a Marin only issue, but I think, what was that, 4 years ago? Just e-bikes weren't quite as prevalent of an issue. I think a lot of jurisdictions were like, oh, we're getting the Lime scooters or whatnot, just starting to deploy, and they hadn't really dealt with all of the issues that surrounded it. So maybe Marin was maybe just a little bit ahead on that issue. But yeah, a lot of times we do see these getting revisited and then opened back up. Particularly when they're successful locally. I mean, that helps a lot, because then we can, whatever the concerns may have been with a particular bill and forced it to, kind of consolidate down to a pilot program, everyone has the data then that they can turn to and say, like, see, you're, whatever you feared it would happen didn't in these cases, and so we should look for broader expansion.
Thanks, Casey. Lucilla, would any member, we have one more question from the dais.
Your diagram that had the 4 issue areas included affordability related to housing versus production, I assume, because that's what a lot of the recent bills have been. When we talk about affordability, it often means, and you mentioned this, that they want us at the local level to reduce the impact fees and the costs. And of course, you hear commercials about that. Oh, we're going to do that. Oftentimes, our fees are to recover the costs in order to process the application and address issues. What do you need from us to support your advocacy when you're walking the halls of the Capitol building and the Swings building and talking to legislators about the fees are not that high? What can we give you?
Yeah,
Cheat sheet of some sort?
Yeah, so you'll probably recall right before COVID was kind of the last time we had a major conversation related to impact fees, and that charge was led by then Assemblymember Tim Grayson. So not just we, but TPA, Cal Cities, CSDA, our education friends spent a lot of time talking to the senator around now senator around the state on, you say the fees are too high, but are you willing to go without parks? Are you willing to go without roads, without schools, without water and sewer laterals? These are all the things. Or conversely, where's the state funding to backfill, what cities would otherwise get? And at that point, then obviously the pandemic happened, and that conversation kind of died away. I think a lot of what we learned from that original kind of go around is we probably overestimated what legislators understand about fees. My favorite one is, well, you have all of these in lieu fees, like the fees are too high, and it's like, well, yes, but if people built the affordable units that we're supposed to, we wouldn't charge an in lieu fee. So why should our fees be lower?
Or if they built the park, we wouldn't charge an in lieu park fee.
Exactly. So a lot of the in lieu. But I think a lot of it is, well, these fees for X project in my district were really high, and it's like, well, maybe they were in lieu fees. Maybe there's this. Maybe there's that. We did see some conversation towards the end of last year around the city of LA and their mansion tax. So there was some conversation related to charter cities' abilities to levy their own document transfer taxes and kind of some of the varying rates around those through the state. So they're getting a little bit granular on that, but I think that a lot of what we will ultimately need is kind of demonstrating what those fees are and then where that funding goes to. Because ultimately, like I said, the conversations that we had several years ago, it was, well, you like schools, right? Okay, so we need money for schools. So I mean, it's not just some misconception that this is just padding, cities and counties, bottom line, so they can have this more general fund revenue that it is. And my favorite is always reminding folks about the 218 process that cities have to go through in establishing fees and asking if we could maybe just do something like that at the state level, which I'm always quickly laughed out of the room. But the reminder is that, cities and local governments have to go through a fee setting process. We don't just have the ability to, assess fees because we want to, or we like this number.
And generally with a nexus to actually the cost to deliver the service.
Exactly. So, but I think that's I think a lot of it is honestly more of an education campaign because there's just kind of a misunderstanding as to what these fees do or where they go to.
Yeah, there's some perception, because I had a conversation and a meeting with then Assembly Member Grayson about 3 years ago, and he said something like, well, fees are 25 to 30% of the cost of the building, and I go, don't think so. I could walk you through it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what they don't they're listening to some voices that just don't, they'd like it for free.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Right, now let's open it up to public comment. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak to this issue, please step forward. No? I don't see anybody stepping forward then. All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council. So any further comments, questions, or motion to accept?
So I'm going to thank the committee and staff and our consultants for the work on this. It's in depth every year, and it reflects the current state of issues that we're most interested in and appropriate, and it gives us the platform from which to be able to respond quickly and not have to bring every letter that we want to write or every phone call we want to make to the council during an agendized meeting. So I'm happy to move to approve the draft legislative agenda for 2026 with the changes proposed at the dais and through the presentation.
Go for it.
And I, too, would like to express my thanks to the Legislative Committee, because now that I've been through this, I was like, wow, that's a lot of work. And I appreciate people's I had asked MCE to give me the specifics of what they were looking for to deal with the changing environment, and they didn't get that to me as quickly as I had hoped. So thank you to staff for getting on that here and incorporating their input into it. And with that, I would like to second.
Yeah, and again, thanks staff and Casey. This is a lot of work goes into this, and then we get it, and within an hour, we're making little changes, and that's it. It seems easy to us, but I know there's a lot of work behind it, so thank you very much. And with that, we've got a motion and a second. Susie, if you could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Davini.
Aye.
Mayor Welk.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, and I believe that brings us to the end of the meeting.
Could I
So-
make a quick announcement?
Yes.
The date for the memorial service for former Mayor Gwen Regalia has been set. It is Thursday, the 26th of February. It is before the East Bay Division meeting. Doors will open at the Lesher at 4, and the service or the celebration will start at 4:30
Right, so at the Lesher Center.
at the Lesher Center. So if we can distribute that information to our community members as well.
And
Doors open at 4.
and if our communications department could also let the East Bay Times know, they had inquired about that last week. I don't believe we had an answer for them, so let's pass that up through our communications manager. With that, we are adjourned until, what's the next day? It's not down here. February 3rd. All right, adjourned. Yeah.